Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Light It Up podcast. On today's episode, Tom sits down with Brad Buntz. Brad is a seasoned lighting professional, having been in the industry for 26 years. For the past 18 years, Brad has been running the successful Group1 Sales Rep Agency, which covers the North Central United States. I'll let Tom pick it up from here. Brad, thanks again for joining Light It Up podcast. Tell us something a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. I'm glad to be here. I guess I would say I'm a self-proclaimed lighting geek. Been around this industry. And when you asked me to do this podcast, I went back and looked at my history. I've been around this industry now 26 years, and obviously wouldn't haven't stayed in it that long. Born and raised in Iowa, still live in Iowa with my wife. We've got a pretty reasonable territory and some good people that work with us, and got a lot of good customers that we consider friends. We got a lot of good vendors we consider friends, and I'm just very fortunate to be able to do in life what I love to do. So that's about it.
Did you at one time have your own lighting showroom?
No, I got into the lighting industry in 1994. I was in another sales position in a different industry, but always enjoyed construction, whether it was remodeling. We built a few houses, mostly for ourselves, ultimately built a few spec homes, and loved the creative side of construction and new home construction and remodeling. Just to bring something to life and make it feel that special was touching to me. So I was in a different industry, and I met a friend. And he and his father were preparing to buy a long-standing showroom. It wasn't just lighting. They had basically everything for your home, and they were a supplier of mine. So lighting was one of the categories. They were a complete kitchen design service. We got 15 different brands of cabinets, fireplace store, flooring, siding, windows, doors, plumbing, appliances, you name it. They had it all. And they had asked me to join their team. And wasn't sure at first. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I didn't really like the fact that I might have to be a home builder because it's a financial commitment. Had gone through a couple of recessions, and if you're stuck with a few houses in the downturn, you're in trouble. So I ultimately joined that company, but the only position they had open was a kitchen design position. So I did that for about a year, but I found myself gravitating towards lighting with every kitchen that I did. Worked with lighting to make that kitchen a full experience, because without the proper lighting, the nicest kitchen in the world wasn't a great kitchen. And ultimately, they approached me to take on managing that division as well as a couple of others, and found tremendous passion for lighting design in general. So that's it. I did that for 8 years. Then I was approached by a prominent lighting vendor in the industry, one of my suppliers, about joining their team, taking my passion to another level. And I joined the repping side, the agency side at that point. So when I met you, Tom, met you 18 years ago at this point. So can you believe it?
No. And I can remember that day that we met in the Dallas showroom.
Yep, absolutely.
So what lines do you currently represent?
Most of our lines are residential and light commercial lines. So we still focus on the home, whether it be new home remodeling, the showroom side of the business, where the consumer that goes to the showroom is either a home builder's customer, an electrician's customer, or just a walk-in customer looking for lighting. That's the basic focus for our agency. We like that. We know that. Some of our customers have electrical distributor desks, and we work with those electrical distributor people as well. But so most of our lines are residentially focused. A couple of them are ceiling fan lines, and then you with Emery Allen, the retrofit technology LED line. So do you want to in order? Do you want a list of what they are?
Sure.
Okay, well, I'll do them alphabetically. It's easier that way. Allura, which is part of the Cusco company. Cusco came stateside about 4 years ago. We represent those people. Emerson ceiling fans, we represent Emerson and the Luminous Brands package. of course, Hubbardton Forge. Hubbardton Forge is the second company we took on as we grew our agency and have had that in our lineup for 10 or 11 years now. Innovations Lighting, picked those guys up a couple of years ago, about a year ago, I guess. Been a nice addition for us. Matthews Ceiling Fans. Matthews has a different kind of ceiling fan, a little higher end architectural grade fan. Quozel is the first company that I worked for on the repping side of things. Been a great company and a great experience for me. And Veriluz, very creative company out of Vegas that we represent. We just picked up a local company out of Minneapolis called Clear Mirror. Clear Mirror focuses on lit or unlit, fog-free bathroom mirrors. So they could be full-scale mirrors that you might find in a hotel or a large bathroom, or they could be a mirror that goes in your shower that's electrified, lit or unlit, to stay fog-free for shaving or whatever. So I thought that was a nice addition to what we do. We're seeing some of our lighting showrooms get into more plumbing and different branches of home build design product, and thought that would be a nice addition to what we do.
Yeah, no, that's all great. So who is your direct customer?
Our direct customer really is the lighting showroom and people that they touch. So lighting showrooms may work with builders, architects, engineers, specifiers, and we have connections with those people, but our products are all filtered through the lighting showroom. And a showroom may have an electrical, like I said before, electrical side of things where they've got ED desks and they do some work with specification through those desks. But we've basically focused our attention on the lighting showroom. They've been our bread and butter since my career started, and that's who we want to at this point support and help along.
Right.
We're seeing, like I said before, some of these lighting showrooms are branching out and bringing in different products, whether it be furniture or plumbing, appliances. Had one recently add a kitchen design service to their business. So I think we're going to see some of that as time goes on, where more of our lighting showrooms have a broader product range to meet the needs of maybe a broader consumer base.
Sure. I wanted to invite you onto this podcast because as a rep and all the different, reps that I've dealt with over the years and all, you really get it as far as, the understanding of LEDs, what's good, what's not so good, especially from, your customer standpoint, their frustrations and all of that. You also were, I think, probably the first rep agency to agree to rep Emery Allen. And for that, I appreciate that as well. But you have to deal with each of the companies that you represent differently, and the customers differently based on their understanding of LEDs. And also you hear it from each of your customers, the frustrations that they have with, maybe some of the companies that you represent, maybe other companies, they just talk in general about LEDs and, integrated or whatever. And some of the frustrations that those people are faced with. So what do you think is the biggest issue that you as a salesperson have to deal with when talking about LEDs?
Well, thanks for the kind words. Again, the passion for the industry is why I want to know as much as I can about this technology. It's a little uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's changing very fast. It came up on us very fast, and we've all learned a ton. But to stay in front of it and understand day to day what our customers' challenges are is my biggest source of happiness and my biggest frustration at the same time. We want to solve problems, and by knowing what those problems are, you can help others solve those problems. I get a lot. I get a lot of phone calls, emails, texts about, hey, why doesn't this work? Or, hey, this stopped working. What's going on? Get me a new one. And we really have to go back and address the whole system and address what the real problem is, because we don't know what the problem is until we can look at all the components in the system. Back in the day when you had a 5-light chandelier and each of those arms on that 5-light chandelier had a socket that held a regular light bulb, you could go to the store, you could buy 5 light bulbs, you could put those 5 light bulbs in, turn your switch on, and everything worked. It was that simple. If a light bulb burned out, you could go get a different light bulb, and it was probably going to look like the other 4 that were in there. That's not the same today, not with LED technology and with the change in light bulbs that are just available in general. I know our industry calls them lamps, but I have to refer to them as light bulbs in most cases because people think I'm talking about a desk lamp if I call them lamps. But technically, a light bulb is a lamp in our industry. So though a lot of people in our industry have been doing this for a very long time, and that's what we did, and it was simple. That's not what we do anymore. And the consumer has a tremendous amount of question about how do I become more efficient? How do I become more sustainable? How do I put whether it's an integrated product or a drop-in product like Emery Allen into my home and know that it's going to work? That's the biggest question. Every one of my customers will tell you, I want my customer to be able to walk in the door, get something that's reasonably priced, that's energy efficient, LED product, that's fully dimmable. For whatever reason, everybody wants to dim today, and I do. I have dimmers all over my house, so I understand that. But that wasn't always the case. And they want consistency. They want everything to look the same, whether it's in that 5-light chandelier or throughout their whole home. And that's where we run into problems because we're buying products from different vendors, and consistency varies from vendor to vendor. 3000K lamp from you isn't going to look like a 3000K lamp from another vendor in the industry. And we get different tones throughout the house. We didn't have that years ago, and we have that now. So that's basically in a nutshell what my customer wants is a reasonably priced product that's fully dimmable, that's consistent. Easier said than done, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we take a look at our own product line, one of the things that we've done or we've tried to do is make the transition from incandescent to LED as transparent as possible. It's not all that easy. You can do it with 120 volt fairly easily. You have to watch the dimmer things and the overloading of dimmers, which is a lot easier to do than with standard incandescent bulbs. And then when you move to 12 volt, I mean, all the players in the sandbox just happen to change. You've got to deal with, the lamps, the transformers, the dimmers, and all of that. And all it takes is one component to throw everything out of whack. And then I don't know if you've experienced this, but you could have let's say like a monorail track system, and you could have, let's just say 6 lamps on it. And either 6 lamps or 6 integrated heads. One of those components are bad, meaning one of the lamps or integrated fixtures are bad, and it throws all of them off. And they all start blinking or flashing or something like that. It's like, holy cow, we never had this to deal with incandescent lighting. So, that's why we do what we do with this podcast and everything else is try to take all the guesswork out of this. And it's not just so much your customer, but it's the end consumer that we get calls from every day and ask, we solve problems people are faced with 12 volts or 120 volts when dealing with our products. Sometimes when people will give us a call and we'll talk about integrated products, I don't care. I'll try to help somebody out as much as possible. And then, the electricians have the same thing when it gets into especially 12 volt issues. And when you get to maxing out capacities of transformers and dimmers and things like that, it's not as easy as it was in the incandescent days. So, yeah, I get it. What would you say your customers' biggest frustration is in dealing with LED technologies? Is it the color? Is it what?
It's failure. It's failure at several different levels. Like you said, 120 volt product's pretty easy. You have a switch and you have a product, and you turn the switch on and you expect it to light. And it does in most cases. But I've run into a couple of situations here recently where the switches in the houses are 25 years old. They're not on dimmer switch. They're a standard on-off switch, but they're what they called in the day a quiet switch. And a quiet switch was not a direct contact switch. So when I grew up, the switches in my house went click, click when you turn them on and off. Well, switches today, when you turn them on, they don't make any noise. Well, there's a friction system in there, and sometimes that gets worn out, and that friction doesn't have direct contact, and therefore the bulb isn't getting fed full voltage, and it's sizzling or flickering or doing some things it shouldn't do. So I've ran into that recently, where the folks that bought the bulbs actually went and replaced their switches, and problem went away. Sockets, some of these miniature products that have BiPen or G9 plugins, the socket can get loose over the years from replacing the bulb. And when you put a LED bulb in there, there can be some arcing. And that arcing is really hard on the bulb. It diminishes the bulb life. I had a situation recently where they retrofitted a 10-year-old halogen backlight, and those sockets were arcing to the point where they could almost hear them, and the bulbs failed in about 4 months. And we didn't really have a solution for it except to go back to halogen at that point, because or replace the fixture, because the sockets had just had enough wear on them that there wasn't the ability to use the product we wanted to use.
Sure. Yeah.
We run into dimmer issues all the time. I get defective requests a number of times a week, and says, "Hey, this broke. This stopped working. Please replace it." Well, and I never get it's on a dimmer. I just get please replace it. So then I have to email or call back and say, is this particular product on a dimmer? If so, what is the make and model of that dimmer? Because we want to make sure it's a compatible dimmer. A lot of incompatibility out there when it comes to dimmers. A lot of people, first of all, consumer walks in, they don't even know if they have a dimmer sometimes. They don't know what their dimmer switch is. They just know that they have a switch, and they want to get an LED bulb, and they want it to work. So run into a lot of compatibility issues with dimmers and failures, or just inconsistent light output. And then when you get into 12-volt systems, we really have a number of problems with dimmer transformer light bulb applications, because the transformer on anything more than a few years old is truly a incandescent transformer and not an LED driver, and not a compatible part of that system. So, we try to tell our customers to tell their customers, if you've got 3 mini pendants over your island and they're 7 years old, you're probably going to have to replace your transformer with a new driver. We're probably going to have to put a new switch in your wall if you want to dim it, and then we can have this system that will be fully compatible. That's a big one anymore. I get into that one a lot.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to 2 customers within the last week about the same issue. And typically it's everybody wants to change their 3-light island pendant light from a halogen to a LED. Number one, the glass gets too hot, heats up the entire kitchen, especially in the summer. Or what we see a lot of is that the socket wiring is cooking and becomes brittle and will finally arc out or something like that. So, people just want to switch over to an LED bulb, and you have to explain to them. And I think we just came out with a blog post about that this week, is when you replace a product from a incandescent to LED, there's some other factors that you really need to look at. And one of them is being the transformer. It's probably the number one thing that you have to look at. 9 times out of 10, if the bulb's flickering or doing something strange, it's transformer related. And it's not a matter of if it's going to fail. When you put an LED on a halogen transformer, it's just a matter of when it's going to fail. And, I've done some things for some customers where it's like, here, I'll tell you what, the guy wouldn't believe me that he has to replace the transformer. So I'll tell you what, I'll send you a transformer. And, you need 3 of these things. If it solves your problem, call me back and, we'll replace the rest of them and I'll charge you for the one. And, 100% of the time the people are calling me back and say, yep, that took care of the issue there, because the halogen transformers have a minimum and a maximum load capacity. And if you're running a 50-watt halogen bulb and you're going to put a 5-watt LED bulb, all of a sudden, the transformer's not seeing it, and you run into this problem. So, yeah, I get it. I see it all the time, and that's what we're trying to do the most of right now, is just to educate the people about this. But, it's difficult getting that information out there. I want to go back to one thing that you said about the 120 volt and the compatibility issue with dimmers. Do you see that more with LED retrofit or drop-in bulbs, or is that true with integrated fixtures?
It's probably 50-50 if I were to be able to filter it out. Again, it's a consumer that might have a 25 or 30-year-old house, and they've got possibly even a rotary dimmer that they're using, which doesn't work well with LED. And they don't know. They've for 25 years they've put a new light bulb in this fixture and it's worked just fine. So they just don't have the knowledge to be able to go into our showrooms and say, here's what I have and here's what I want to do. So we are constantly trying to teach and learn, so people can understand that we need to look at everything that you have in your system to make sure it works properly. I'll stop into the box store occasionally, Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's. I still do some construction projects, and I just always walk by the light bulb aisle, and I see people looking at the light bulbs, and they're lost. I feel so bad for them. I want to help them sometimes, but they don't know what to pick. It's very, very confusing to the average person.
Oh, it was the same thing. I was picking up some products in the electrical department, and there was a guy at the end of the aisle, and he just looked like deer in the headlights look. It's like, what am I trying to buy here? What am I trying to replace? So, yeah, I certainly get it. So what is it that the industry can do to help this situation? Or what is it that the manufacturers can do to help the situation?
Well, doing what you're doing here is a good step, to help people have a resource to go learn and understand what this technology is about. And because it changes so fast, we really have to stay on that. Even you and I can go do research online about LED technology, and we can't get a lot of information that makes sense. A lot of it's very, very high level. And some of it is information that we can use and make sense out of, but there's not a lot of it out there. Everybody's so busy anymore that it's hard to say, this is what I want to focus on today. I want to learn about this technology because next week it's going to be different. And then next week it's going to be different again. I mean, again, I run into a number of issues that keep me in the know on things, but every week I get something new, and that makes it interesting, but also frustrating. I think it's come a long ways. When you talk about integrated product, when integrated product first came into the marketplace, it was very inconsistent. Color temperature was not consistent. You'd see flicker, even from a family of products where there'd be 3 different sizes of a light bar. In one of the showrooms that at our lighting market, you could see more reds in one, more blues in the other, and more yellows in the next one. They were all the same product, all the same family. But the consistency wasn't there. I'm going to call it first generation. It wasn't first generation, but it was probably first generation to us. Basically meaning when the volume of this started to pick up, it was our first generation of experience. I think it's come a long ways. I think the diode quality's come a long ways. I think the driver quality's come a long ways. I think the compatibility's come a long ways. And I think as long as we keep pressing to make sure that we put the best quality components in every product that we sell in the industry, within reason to keep it affordable, we'll do our part. There's a lot of people out there still manufacturing products that don't have replaceable boards, that don't have replaceable drivers. And my customers are a little afraid of that. They're afraid that if they put 50 in a corridor and one goes bad in a year, what do we do? What do we do with that? If it has a replaceable part, you put a driver in, it's going to be just like the rest. If you have a replaceable board and you put the new board in, it's going to look a little different than the rest because of burn-in. Burn-in, you might want to get into what that is for our listeners, but if it doesn't have a replaceable product, what do you do? What do you do if that manufacturer has discontinued that look based on design? Because our industry changes frequently. So I know my customers talk a lot about that. They talk a lot about their concerns on quality and durability. Generation 1. Now, again, quality's come a long ways. Components have come a long ways. We're seeing drivers that can really ramp up the output, find that fine line between high output and failure. So things have really changed, I would say, even in the last 6 months to a year. So I think as long as an industry, we keep doing what we're doing, educating and focusing on the quality components, we'll get ahead of this sooner or later.
Yeah. You mentioned the replaceable boards and things like that and the integrated fixtures. And the first thing that came to mind to me was like the printed circuit board in your microwave or in your oven or stove or whatever you have in your kitchen. I mean, those things don't really change over a long period of time, but you'll have a fixture manufacturer, they'll come out with 500 new products, a year or something like that. And, are they reusing those integrated boards over and over and over again so that, what's the, if they do have to make a repair, it's easy to do on an oven or a microwave or whatnot, because, you can go to an appliance repair store and buy those components, but not so much in an LED light fixture. It's a little bit more difficult. So I agree with you that, the quality of the product has got to be top notch, because people don't want to be, buying, fixtures over and over again. And listen, there's the whole integrated versus drop-in thing. And, the biggest advantage of an integrated is, it's designed right and all that, you'll get a lot more light output out of an integrated light fixture than you will an LED retrofit bulb. And
absolutely, it's a huge advantage.
And the biggest advantage is, when we design a LED bulb, it has to work in all types of environments and all types of whatever. So we have to put so much into the thermal heat dissipation factor and all of this, and assuming how this thing is going to run in flush mounts or accent lights or this or that. And with an integrated fixture, I mean, you have the ability to take the fixture itself and design the heat sink directly into the fixture, and you should be able to just crank the amount of light, out of that. So, and it's not always being done. And, on the downside of that is you pick up a fixture manufacturer just picks up an off-the-shelf module and slaps it in this product and slaps it in that product. You're not really gaining any of the additional benefits. So, I see it both ways, Yeah,
so, this was generation 1, goes back a few years, but I got one of my customers called me to meet them at a condo remodel, and they had a corridor that had, I think, 46 wall sconces, and they're on 24/7. The fixture that they had picked to replace the fluorescent wall sconce they had there for 10 or 15 years was an integrated product. And this particular product happened to be, again, this is back generation 1, something that was rated for around 25,000 hours. I mean, product now is rated for 50, 100, who knows? There's just long life on some of this stuff. But the fixture they had picked up for this particular job was 25,000 hours. Now, that fixture is going to be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I said, okay, let's do the math on this. I said, how many hours are in a year? And it was 8,000-ish. I said, okay, 8,000 goes into 25,000 hours. How many times? They said, not quite 3. I said, exactly. So based on the warranty on this product, in 3 years, In 3 years, you could start having failures and it won't be backed up. And they didn't even think about that. They just thought, hey, it's going to last forever. It's LED. And that is a challenge out there, an educational piece that we have to get out there. So in this particular case, they picked the same exact light fixture, they had a socketed version. So we bought the socketed version and we put a LED retrofit drop-in bulb in and solved their problem. Now, do we get the light output, the lumens per watt that we could have, realized? Probably not, but it worked for their environment. So, both have a place. It's just, you have to, as a lighting designer, look at your space, and you need to design in the right product for your customers' needs.
Sure. Well, that's a great point. So in your opinion, can LEDs work in all different lighting applications?
I think so. Let's look at some of the sculptural product out there right now. There is truly lit art in our marketplace, and without LED, that would never have happened. So it's really opened up a design style that we would have never experienced without the technology. Whether it's a drop-in product or an integrated product, I don't see any application where it wouldn't work. Again, as a lighting designer, I would take a look at my space and I would say, okay, in this space, how do you want to feel here? What do you want to accomplish here? What do you want to do here? And I would design that space accordingly. So I don't really know if there's anything that couldn't use the technology. In some cases, people prefer incandescent because they can still dim it and warm it as they dim it. Now, that technology is coming around as well. But when you dim an LED light source, a routine LED source in the marketplace, you're going to dim the level of that light, but you're not going to dim the tone of that light. So it's going to dim and level, but it's not going to get any warmer. When you dim an incandescent source, it's going to dim in level, but it's also going to dim in tone and get a little warmer and softer. Sunrise, sunset versus just, clouds or no clouds, I guess. And it's what you like, what you're used to, but it's something again, from an educational standpoint, we need to let people know that they're not going to get that warm feel, and that might be what they expect. So again, as a lighting designer, you really need to look at your application and say, what do you want? How do you want to feel? And design it properly. And I think the two can live together. I think an LED and an incandescent product can live together in a residence, especially, and be just fine.
I can think of one application that LEDs won't work. Ovens.
You're right. I guess that is one place I didn't think about. Anything that's encapsulated, because if they can't breathe, they die.
Oh, yeah.
And we do run into that once in a while.
You're baking a cake at 450 degrees, or I don't know if you bake a cake at 450 or not, but then you want to turn on the light and see how the cake's doing. How long's that bulb going to last? I'm not into it enough where I know if there's something that can last, for a long time under that type of heat and temperature. But LEDs love refrigerators, not so much ovens or anything like that. So, yeah.
Well, I read an article recently. It was a parking lot. I think it was in Arizona. And you think, okay, parking lot lights come on at night. It's cooler at night. It's no big deal. They'll stay cool. But evidently, these light fixtures were more of a dark sky friendly kind of light fixture. So the array was underneath the canopy. The board was underneath the canopy. And the pole would come up, the canopy come across, and the board was set up inside that canopy. During the day, the temperature of that canopy would reach, I think, 150 or 60 degrees. And they deteriorated all of the diodes that were in that light fixture because it was so hot. It wasn't anything to do with running and operating. It was due to the fact that the sun was so hot on that fixture. So I don't know how you address that one.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. So talking about lighting in general, what are the biggest challenges in today's lighting market?
Oh boy. Well, this is really kind of a bit of a quote from an article I read recently, where the person that wrote the article said there's been a lot of pressure on people with all the changes in our industry, and quite frankly, retail in general. Technology has changed. It's hard to keep up with the day-to-day pace of everything. Some people don't want to understand the technology. I had a lady quit her job about a year ago, and she told me, you know what, I got into this business to sell pretty things, and I don't want to deal with this. And whether that was the reason or not, that's what she told me. I think we must adapt to changes generally, whatever it is, technology, how people buy products, how we educate people. What does the retail experience look like? I think we have to adapt to those changes and evolve. I don't know. It's $1 million question right now. There's a lot going on, and nobody has a blueprint for this. Nobody's experienced this before, so we just have to day by day say what's going on and how do we do the best with it.
Are there any of your customers that just out and out won't buy an LED fixture?
No, they'll all try it. So they got a little spooked on generation 1 when some of the product failures were happening. But I think, like I said, in just talking to them over the last 6 months to a year, and we've had a little more time to have conversations on the phone, since this pandemic. I think they feel more comfortable with the technology today than they did even a year ago. They feel better about the quality today than they did a year ago. They're still a little concerned about, as I said before, the consistency, even from vendor to vendor. I had a customer tell me the other day they sold a customer 5 LED drop-ins for a fixture, and from the same company, the same manufacturer, and 4 of them had one color and the other one had a slightly different color. And they had to sell them 5 more because they couldn't find one that would match the other. So I think people get a little squirrely when they have somebody come in and say, I want to talk about LED, and we all want our customer to go home and have a great experience with that. And sometimes that's not happening. So I think people get a little concerned with this technology that there's still a ways to go. I know your products. What is the tolerance on CRI, the color rendering, and the Kelvin? What is your tolerance? I mean, it's very high. So I know that when I sell 5 every Allen bulbs, they're all going to be the same. If one goes bad for some reason and they have to replace that one, it's going to look a little different for a while. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, and it has to do with the whole, you said burn-in thing. But from the time that you turn an LED lamp on, it's starting to deteriorate. So the deterioration rate is can be based on lumen depreciation, or could be a result of that could be due to color shift or anything like that. Everything that we have is 4-step binning range, and I'll get into that in a second. But as the bulb gets older, it's going to, or the LED gets older, it's going to decrease with time. And, the Department of Energy and I forget who else, it's called out as L70, which is a lifetime measurement, that at below 70% of the original illumination, they declare that bulb to be dead. So that lifetime that people are talking about is to L70. It's not when the bulb goes out. So even when you say our bulbs are 40 whatever thousand hours, when you get to 50,000 hours, they will still be on, they'll still work, but they will be producing less than, 70% of the original illumination. So, that's part of it. You get a color shift, you get depreciation change and all of that. Not to get into that if you get various types of voltage spikes or one thing or another, you can pop an LED real quick, and medium power LEDs always will shift from warm to cool when they're failing due to spikes or something like that. There's different types of failure rates, for and different types of failures for all the different types of things that could particularly happen, to that bulb. And when I talk about black body curve, just backing up a second, comparing LEDs to incandescent bulbs. I mean, incandescent bulbs, what are they? They're a tungsten filament that get heated up when you apply a certain charge to them, 120 volts or whatever, and it glows. And it glows consistency at 2685 degrees Kelvin, or somewhere around there, let's say. So with LEDs, it's not as simple as heating up a tungsten filament. It's I like to refer to it as you're manufacturing artificial light, because you're taking a LED chip and you're applying, in simple terms, a coating on top of it, phosphor coating or whatever. And you have this slurry of material that changes the color, the CRI, and all of that's going in or coming out of that bulb. So the color obviously is mixed from red, green, or red, blue, cyan, something like that. And then if you get a shift in this, what they call a black body curve, that could tend to go a little to the right, a little to the left, meaning it could be a little green, it could be a little red, it could be a little blue. And our goal is to keep this tolerance as small as possible, not only in the degrees Kelvin, because you can have a 2700 CCT lamp and then compare it to another one that measures on a spectrometer exactly the same CCT, but the black body curve can be off where one is looking a little green and one's looking a little bit red. It's all within tolerance, but that's just some of the things that you have to play around with. And what's so difficult is when the consumer goes and buys something for their house, and let's just say they've got MR16s that go up in recess cans or par lamps, and then they use, and that could be in your bathroom or your kitchen, and then you have island lights, which are using GY 6.35 12 volt or a G9 or whatever that's from a different manufacturer. You've got a lot of crazy stuff going on where the color consistencies of those lamps will be far enough off that, you'll see something doesn't really look right. So it's challenging enough as a manufacturer to keep your binning as tight as physically possible, and then just hope that all the other lamps that are out there, when they're mixed within the same room, doesn't look too bad. So I don't know if you've ever seen that in any of the applications lighting applications that you've been involved with.
Oh yeah. Of course, my eye and your eye probably are different than the average, and we notice those things. But I'll go into a residence and they'll have over their dining room table 3 bulbs in their fixture that are 5,000 K and 3 bulbs that are 2,700 K, and they're okay with it. So I don't know. I strive for that consistency even when I'm blending LED with incandescent, just so that we have a consistent look throughout their home. Yeah.
It bugs us, and we've been looking at these things for, a long time, but to the average homeowner, I guess, or whatever, they can live with that. Drives us nuts, but so.
Well, I think they go to the store and they see a daylight on a package, and they assume daylight's what they want in their home, and daylight's very blue. So when they get it home, it's like, oh, that's not what I thought daylight was. And I think we need to maybe come up with some terminology that makes more sense to the consumer instead of daylight or warm white.
Warm white.
I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, cool white, and what does that relate to? When you get to put a number to it, at least it's a little bit more consistent. But I don't know where all these warm, cools, and stuff came from. It's not a measurable valuation, in my opinion. So, drop-in lamps, integrated lighting. Where do you think this is going? Is there a place for both, in the entire market? Do you see it going one way or the other, or do they both have their place?
They'll walk hand in hand for a very long time. I don't think one will overtake the other anytime soon. There are places where drop-in makes sense, especially when you don't want to replace the fixtures in your home. There are places where integrated makes sense because you need high output, you need efficiency, you need low maintenance, you need cool. I think they'll walk hand in hand for a very long period of time, and it will naturally find its way. The consumer will drive that at some point. They'll decide what they want. But I think we're at a really good spot right now with the technology, like I said before, better than we've seen for a very long time, where things are comfortable. Our customers are comfortable with what's available to them, more so than they were even a year ago. And the consumer then can feel assured because our customers can help them find the best solutions.
Yeah. I think for a long time, I think it was a battle of a company. Oh, we've got to go all integrated, or we got to go all of this. But, it's kind of like the difference between diesel and gasoline. Everything has its place. You need one for doing one type of thing and one for the type of, for something else. When there's a higher risk of either failure or replacement, you lean towards one. And there's a higher maintenance issue up on the ceiling, high up on the wall, outdoors for, stuff like that, where it makes sense to have integrated. And obviously, as the more contemporary fixtures get with LEDs, there's no way that you're ever going to do, anything like that with a LED bulb. So I think you're right. I think they'll work hand in hand for many years.
And some municipalities will provide rebate to the end user or the pro that's putting the job together, and that rebate may be specific to an integrated product. That rebate may allow a drop-in product as long as it meets certain standards, typical California standards that have helped, I think, this industry a lot in regulating things a little bit. But like I said, I think they're both viable. I think they both will survive well. There are states like California who have a true grid issue. They don't have enough energy for their population. I lived out there for a couple of years, and rolling brownouts and blackouts are very common. By reducing the consumption, and we can do that with LED integrated or drop-in, we can definitely save resources and provide a better service. So, like I said, I've got companies that do both, and they do both well, and I see both being very valid in our environment.
Right. You just mentioned real quick about rebates and stuff like that. Do you see them sticking around, or with the little, amount of incandescent bulbs that there are left out there? What's the benefit of offering rebates? It's all you can get.
I think it was probably just a system that was put in place to create an awareness, especially as the incandescent bulb was being phased out. And it's just probably not top of mind right now. It's just still there, trying to get people to maintain that top of mind. I know I need to replace my furnace and air conditioner in my own home. And last year there was a pretty good rebate program for furnace and air conditioner replacement. This year there is none. So it could certainly disappear very quickly. You just don't know.
Yeah, no, I get it. So we're capping up top of an hour here. You get a couple of lighting gearheads talking, and you kind of can ramble on and on. And so I wanted to wrap this up today. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention or discuss that we didn't touch base on or anything like that?
No, I think at this point we caught quite a bit of it. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm guessing you're going to continue these podcasts with different guests throughout the coming year, and it'd be interesting to listen to see how this technology continues to evolve. It's pretty fascinating to watch what's happened and what's happening, and be fun to continue to watch it, especially as things get more consistent and reliable.
And it's surprising. Yes, we are going to continue this for as long as we can. And for the most part, the guests have been friends or people that, I associate as my friends that I've met throughout the industry that have a lot to say about LED lighting, the lighting industry, and all that. And it's real interesting how, each of the different guests that have been on has their take on things, from ceiling fans to other different, fixture manufacturers and all of that. And we're going to talk to some regulatory people coming up here pretty soon and find out from a regulatory standpoint, where is this going? Where are the failures and all of that. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun talking to everyone out there. And again, our goal is to educate people getting into the lighting industry or back into the lighting industry. If they have questions, they can listen up. Or surprisingly, the number of people that I've had shoot me an email or call up and say, "Hey, I remember you talking about 12-volt landscape cable and it burning up a customer's mulch because of this reason or that," and talking about those types of things. It's truly a lot of fun, and we hope to get as much information out to the customer, the consumer, the electrician as possible. So, Brad, I thank you for taking your time of your busy day. We had to peel this time away to sit down and chat about this, but I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you do for us and for the industry, and taking the time and with your input and all of that. I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Tom. I am honored to represent your products, and it was never a question when you made that call to see if we had an interest. You and I go way back, and I know you do everything to the highest level. And didn't hesitate for 1 second to move on to help you with this dream, this vision, and now providing a product to our industry that's really second to none. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate your kind words. And with that, we'll sign off. And if anybody has any questions, comments, or what, please send them to info@emeryallen.com and or give us a call here. All of our information's on our website. We'll be happy to answer your questions. So, Brad, thanks again, and look forward to talking with you soon.
All right, take care, Tom.
All right, we'll see you.